book 2 of the King's Information Network series. So, here we go. Chapter 11. We're back with Morgan. Morgan woke to the sound of the deadbolt being thrown back before Chris bounced into the room beaming. Guess what? What? Matt asked tiredly, scrubbing his eyes with the back of his arm. No, guess! What is it, Malone? Matthew, do not spoil my fun. Guess. You've killed the entire city and are now moving on to the country and the world, he guessed, voice dripping with sarcasm. Chris threw himself to the ground in front of them, energy as boundless as a 5-year-old. Morgan wondered what time it was, rubbing at her own eyes. It was the first time Chris had visited since he'd thrown Matt in to join her, and they'd been fed maybe twice since then? No, guess again. Your fondest dream came true? Morgan said, for lack of a better option. It also seemed vague enough to maybe satisfy him. He beamed, patting her on her bruised cheek hard. She winced. Basically, I just saw Russell. You saw Russ? Matt asked, sitting up straighter. Here. Of course here. Where else would it be, Matthew? He asked, animation turning to anger in a mere second. So I live, Morgan threw in, trying to divert attention. Not necessarily, he said, smiling cheerfully. The way his moods flipped on a coin was deeply disconcerting. You were almost free, but Russ said no. He doesn't appreciate the lives of others, apparently. Matt's eyes narrowed. Why do I feel that statement was entirely skewed by your logic, Malone? Because you have no trust, Matthew, and that's why you're going to die first. How long do we have? Morgan asked. He grinned at her. Depends on my mood. That's always been true, she pointed out. No, it hasn't. I promised you that I wouldn't kill you if Russell came, he said, pouting. And yet you say it depends on your mood. Well, he said in the manner of a particularly pompous teacher, Russ has come, so that part of the deal is over. Now, what happens depends very much on his next moves. How so? He said he'd give me a challenge. If he doesn't, I might get bored before he gets here. Matt's eyes narrowed. Why do I feel like you don't mean that as gets here with a rescue party? Chris grinned. Because I don't. Russ understands me. Now, if you don't mind, I was talking to Morgan. Or you could leave Morgan out of this. There's no need to be a bully on top of everything else, Malone. Doesn't matter what you think Russ understands. He'll beat you again, like he has every time you two have clashed. Almost instantly, Chris fluidly rose to his feet to loom over Matt. You, my friend, he said quietly, are fast outstaying your welcome. I'd watch myself if I were you, or else you won't last long enough to see Russell again. Matt's eyes blazed as he looked up at Chris, but he wisely kept his mouth shut. Chris lashed out his foot, and Matt grunted, although their eyes never deviated from each other. Morgan shivered, realizing that, for the first time in her life, she was witnessing true hatred. She opened her mouth and closed it again, never having seen Chris this angry, and honestly scared of what he might do if she failed to fully distract him. Finally, after what seemed like ages, Chris shrugged and turned back to Morgan. Russell won't win, he told her, face tight with anger. She nodded silently. Russell won't win, and you'll either die or join the Hostlers. I won't kill you unless I have to, but I will make you watch me kill him. Him, and Matthew, and Shannon. They took Russell away from me. Did you know that? She lied and shook her head. They did. He was my friend first. Mine. That off-kilter smile reappeared, the one that always made Morgan shiver. She pressed her back more tightly into the corner, watching him warily. For a moment, his gaze was distant before it snapped back to hers. Will you be my friend, Morgan? If you let Matt go and stop trying to kill Russell, then yes, she tried. But as Morgan had learned, no one could expect a rational response out of Chris Malone. He frowned, all pouting small child again. I have to kill Russell, Morgan. Don't you understand? He's always beat me. Always. And now I need to beat him. I think you beat him pretty good when you murdered his parents, she said carefully. No, I need to beat Russ like he's beaten me. His parents were just a start. They deserved it in their own right for pulling him away from me, like Matthew and Shannon, he said. It seems to me you were the one constantly beating Russ, Matt said, the hatred still evident in his voice. You never knew when to stop, Malone. You still don't. Do you have any idea how much you've damaged him? You call yourself his friend, but all you've done is create pain and misery. You drove him away from his home for years. He seemed fine today, Chris said childishly, keeping his eyes on Morgan. I think he'd know better than to show you his feelings. Only then did Chris look over at Matt, who'd gotten to his feet slowly, hands and tight fists at his side. But I was his first friend. Then you betrayed him. Morgan saw it in his face a split second before it happened and scrambled to her own feet, ignoring how unsteady she was. She had to do something, had to stop this. But before she was fully up, Chris had already launched himself at Matt with a snarl. She watched, almost in slow motion, as Chris slammed Matt hard into the wall. Matt's head hit with a sickening thud. The move would have ended the fight before it really began if Morgan hadn't charged forward. She caught Chris before he could whack Matt's head against the wall again and tackled him to the side. He didn't go down, unfortunately, but he did stumble a few feet, grip on Matt vanishing as he spun to look at her. "Morgan?" he said, sounding honestly confused as she stepped back to Matt's side, fists clenched and eyes narrowed. Then he laughed. "Oh, Matthew, look, you have a protector." "Morgan," Matt hissed, rubbing the back of his head as he stepped away from the wall, placing himself in the line of fire. "I know what I'm doing," she shot back, although she wasn't sure she really did. "Your problem is with me, Malone." "No, actually, I believe it's with both of you," he said cheerfully before he dodged in, surprising Morgan with his speed again. Matt was ready, though, throwing a punch even as he sidestepped and thrust out a leg. Chris spun, catching the fist high in the shoulder, but stopping before he tripped on the outstretched leg. Then he pounced, Morgan had no other word for it, on Matt, catching the smaller man off guard. As she moved to help, his fist shot out as if he'd anticipated her through some sixth sense, and he caught her hard across the forehead with the hilt of his knife. Her eyes crossed as his grip shifted, leaving a cut across the second half of her forehead. She distantly noticed that his speed was almost inhuman. How the hell did Russ best this? She stumbled, trying desperately to stay conscious, already half blind from the blood gushing down her face. "Go down, Morgan," he ordered, and lashed out with his foot, catching her knee. She was so wobbly it was enough to drop her. Still, she struggled to get back. She couldn't go down that easily, not when Matt was still up. Chris's gaze fell on her again. "Fine, if that's how it is," he said, and grinned.